In this episode, we take you behind the scenes of building Northflow, how we prioritize what we're building, the challenges we usually face, and why community feedback drives every decision that we make in our product.
If you've ever wondered how to scale without selling out, this one's for you. Let's go behind the workflow. Hi, I'm Simona.
And I'm Taly.
And I'm Fran.
And today we are taking you behind the scenes of bootstrapping a podcast management SaaS, which is equally the coolest thing that we've probably done. I don't know. I'm going to speak for myself. It's probably one of the coolest things. And also something that continues to challenge us. But there's a lot of things, and in a good way, like challenge us in a really, really good way. But there's a lot of different pieces that we're going to touch on today. The first thing that we're going to talk about is why bootstrapping matters. And we brought Fran in on this episode today because he has a lot of experience doing this, getting funding versus the bootstrapping piece. So, Fran, do you want to talk a little bit about why we chose this path specifically for Northflow and how it continues to keep us focused on what really matters and what we're trying to create? And Taly, feel free to jump in as well.
Sure. Yeah. So bootstrapping, like you mentioned at the beginning, is definitely not the easiest path to go, but it gives you the freedom to explore ideas and talk to your customers, being closer to your customer and being able to actually use their feedback to build your product. And in our case, we're able to do this without being in a hurry to be profitable. So we don't have to worry about being profitable by X, Y, and Z date. We're able to take our time, talk to each person individually, understand their process, and use that to build a product. When you're a funded startup, it's a little different. You're in a hurry from the beginning. You have to get things done. You have to show results. You have to have the right metrics. And in our case, generally, I think it's a better idea for anybody to bootstrap anything they're doing at the beginning until they have a solid path. And in our case, we don't know that we will ever do a fundraise, but we have the freedom to be able to focus on what we think is the most important right now without having to be confused with having user feedback at the same time as having investors feedback and all sorts of things coming from all sorts of directions. This way we can just focus on users and making sure we're building what we must build at least at this phase.
Can I just ask a kind of a clarifying question for our listener right now? Obviously, like we know what bootstrapping and, funding is. Can you just give a really quick overview of the main differences between the two?
Yeah, definitely. Bootstrapping means in this scenario, we're basically building everything ourselves. We're not getting outside investment. So we have to be super focused on what matters right now. And so one of the biggest difference, in my opinion, would be the fact that you're laser focused on that one thing that you must do. When you're raising funds and you're basically getting money from a VC firm or any other source, an angel investor, you now have a bunch of other things that you have to do, from bureaucracy to hiring people and doing a whole bunch of things. Because one of the things that happens often is that when you have money, you want to have more people. And that becomes a problem because now you have to come up with processes, you have to come up with operational procedures, and all of those things are taking your focus away from actually building a product or doing the thing that you must be doing. When you're bootstrapping, you don't have a lot of resources, but you have only one thing to do, which is provide the value you must provide to your customer. In our case, that's basically what we're doing. We don't have to be worried about anybody else other than the users that are now using Northflow. And so that gives us the advantage of not having anything else to worry about. But on the other hand, it shortens our ability to grow faster, to scale faster, to build faster. And so we're always going to be in that sort of disadvantage when you compare ourselves to other businesses that are, raising funds and they're moving faster than we are. But at the same time, we get to have fun while we're doing this, getting to talk to people every single day, getting their opinion, getting them to participate in what we're doing, and building not only a product but also a community around it. So I think the biggest difference is the fact that we have to be laser focused on what matters without having to do all the other work that normally wouldn't be involved if you were bootstrapped.
And I was just going to add to it too. Like, so with bootstrapping, it also forces us to be like very disciplined in decision making. Like, so every feature, every update, every like little change that we do, it has to be very intentional. And we do like rely a lot of like on the direct feedback that we're getting from our users. So I think that's very important as well to bring it up. And we do try to bring those changes pretty fast, like try to make those as quick as possible. But we have the flexibility, right? Like being bootstrapped, we're able to define like what's important, what feature we need to prioritize. So we're basically like in control of our growth at this moment. And then overall that makes our decision like we're not just serving like investors in this specific case, we're also serving our users. That's like our main focus, serving our users.
I love it. And obviously, there are some challenges that come with the bootstrapping side of things. Do we want to share some of the challenges that we found within Northflow in terms of building it as a bootstrapped company versus outside funding? Fran, you talked about making changes quickly, but maybe there's some other considerations for our listener that we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many things that it's a little harder
There's
when you
so,
don't have.
there's so many challenges. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, there are, and I could list a few, but at the end of the day, when you start actually getting involved into the process of building whatever bootstrapped, you'll see that there will be a whole bunch. But again, just like Tali said, it helps us be super focused on that one thing that's going to move the needle, not only for us, but also for the users that are using Northflow. But some of the challenges would be one of the biggest one for me is moving fast. And when it comes to the product world, it's all about shipping fast and building feedback super fast. So we get feedback today, we want to ship it tomorrow. We want our users to feel like their feedback are being heard and we're applying them. And so when you don't have a big team, especially in the engineering part of it, things take a little longer, which gives a sense of things, or maybe even the users could think, well, they heard, but they didn't apply anything, so I don't see any changes. The reality is everybody's working super hard, but the team is small. So that's one of the biggest challenges. The second one would be marketing. One of the funded companies that I worked for in the past, we had some money in the bank. We raised a couple of millions, so we were able to have a big budget for marketing. And so being able to create a funnel where you can inject some investment into it so that you can get some validation to what you're doing faster is so much different than doing everything by hand. And most of the things that when you're bootstrapped, one of the biggest things you have is you have to do the things that will take longer to provide results, like SEO and all the blog content marketing and so forth. And those things that will never give you the results super fast. It will take a while, and so it takes longer for you to figure things out to know if your strategy is working or not, if your top of funnel is well adjusted, if you're hitting the right target when it comes to your audience. And so those two challenges, I think those are the biggest one, at least at the beginning. And as soon as those things start kind of scaling a bit and your content starts being discovered, you have a little more room to play because now you have a product, now you have people know your brand, people know your content. But until you get to that point, everything is super slow. And it gives us basically, you have to have a lot of grit because you have, as a founder, you're going to have this feeling as if things are not moving fast enough, but it's just moving as fast as it could be as a bootstrap company.
Yeah, I have two things to add too. Like, so, like prioritization, goodness, is everything. Like, we don't have unlimited resources, so we have to really focus on like what's gonna move the needle. I know we're always saying this, like what's gonna move the needle, and so like what's the highest impact and what's actually gonna solve some of the problems that some of the podcast agencies and podcasters are currently facing right now, and how Northflow could solve for that, right? And then there's also like balancing the product development and the marketing, like how like we're while we're building, we're also like doing testing to make sure that everything is going smoothly, and that we're also like trying to push Northflow out there, like, hey people, like this is what we're doing, this is the kind of problem that we're solving. So just like being able to balance all of that has been something that it's challenging, but it's also like a lesson that we're learning as we continue to work together.
It's so true. And also considering each of us, because we're four co-founders here, right? Each of us have our hands in other things as well. So it's not like we're doing Northflow for all of us, like full time. Well, maybe Fran right now is doing a little bit of full time Northflow going on, but I know for myself, like we're still running the agency, right? Like I'm still running my agency on the side. I know you guys have, an agency as well. And so there's also that to consider too. And I think this is a really cool piece to it because it's like you can still create something new. You can still bring a product to market. Like you can still develop something that will change things, even if it maybe doesn't go as fast as you would want it to. Like you're still allowed to dream and be creative and build product and make an impact. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we're all doing multiple things, which makes it difficult. I think that I could include that as one of the challenges of a bootstrap company because it's super hard for you to multitask and do a good job um, uh, on everything you're doing. So for any founder that's doing this, and most founders they basically want to do it themselves or maybe have a co-founder, and that's one thing that I feel like we're very fortunate because we were able to find each other and we all have a very specific superpower per se, which enables us to do a little bit more. And I'm looking at what we've been able to accomplish so far, and it's to me it's pretty impressive because we've been able to do a lot, considering that we're multitasking and we're also running agencies, we're also being advisors in other companies and all sorts of things. And so it's been a very interesting journey, and I would say that this has been a different one for me because everybody is bringing in so much value and being able to share that and build that together and everybody putting in just a little bit but it's resulting in so much. It's been it's been pretty fun.
I agree with you. One of the biggest keys that we focused in on right from the beginning was community. And I think we all understand how important and impactful it is to have a community that is built alongside us. Because at the end of the day, whatever you're doing, whether you're running an agency, developing a new product, throwing a party at your house, essentially, whatever the thing is, you need to get like external buy-in from other people, right? And how we do that, especially through community, is really important. And I want to highlight when we were brainstorming some of the different marketing strategies and techniques that we could take with Northflow, you have your paid ads, and a lot of companies, especially SaaS companies, very easily can, especially ones that have funding, you just put money towards it, right? Do a couple paid ads, see what lands, see what doesn't. Have you hit the messaging? Have you not? Are people resonating? Are they not? But when you look at organic marketing, and especially in today's day and age, when there's so much content out there, so many people trying to break through the noise, we thought, why don't we start our podcast as a touch point to share some of the behind the scenes of not just Northflow, but other things as well, other pieces of creating a workflow. So, do we want to talk a little bit about the podcast and like why we chose this as a strategy to market the product, not only the product, but our company, the values behind our company, the work that we're doing, and showcasing other podcasters and creators as well?
I think one of the biggest things, especially for me being a product person, I get to hear all the workflows from other people and try to apply that into the product and making sure that our product is actually solving a problem and not just being just another tool. And so being able to hear from them directly, either through the podcast or interviewing them or being a way to recruit more people to talk to, I think that that's one of the biggest B's for us. And it's basically helping us to shape the product into what it should be.
One final thought that I will add to this is, especially being in the podcast production space and working with entrepreneurs that use podcasts to grow their business and make money and so on, so on. Something that a podcast, especially with a video component to it, does is it creates a relationship in a different way. So right away, we get to see who our listener and who our audience is, and they get to see who we are, right? How many times do you actually get to see and meet a founder of a SaaS company right off the bat? You don't really, right? Usually a lot of people are working behind the scenes, they're working on their product. And, there's a concept that we've adopted within Northflow, which is something that you can find more on X more than anything else, but it's the idea of build in public. And so we wanted to build Northflow in public. And part of that is being at the forefront of different conversations, right? And sharing actual behind the scenes, letting people meet who the founders are, not only that, but also creating the community behind it. And so I think it's really cool just from a podcast point of view because you don't see a lot of SaaS companies creating a podcast to help build community and to help build relationships with people, and let alone in this industry. Like we work in the podcast industry with this product, right? And so by that, people who are listening to our show right now are learning about the product, but not only that, they can hear our voice, they can see who we are, they can hear our intention and the purpose behind it, right? So it just adds like a layer of depth that you can't really get with paid advertising. I mean, yeah, you
Mhm.
really can't with paid advertising. You don't get the same effect through email marketing. And you can get some of the same effect through social media, but we all know that social media is so curated, you know? A lot of the times, I even know like in my agency, when we edit content, we don't really edit a lot of like the laughter or the banter back and forth and stuff like that because it's part of the experience. And so I think that it adds a really cool layer to it. And I love the idea that if you think of other SaaS businesses and SaaS products, like they don't really have a podcast to go with what they're doing. So I feel like we've broken into a market that is uniquely ours to take the space in, you know?
Yeah. And it's
Great.
really like a two-way relationship, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
just like if you have a podcast agency, you have to like refine your process based on what your client needs, and every client is different. We know that. The way that
Exactly.
we're doing with Northflow and the community, we're basically like trying to get them like, hey, tell us what you need versus what you don't need. Like, so this way we're really like, we're doing this, we're what I like to say is like our user feedback is our roadmap. So all of the feedback that we're getting, we're putting it in a list, and we're actually letting our users decide like what features we work on next and so on.
I love that. Exactly. I love it. Now, as we wrap up our episode today, I would love if we could each share one key takeaway from our conversation that our listener can either take and implement right away, something to think about for the future, or a piece of advice that you have based off of this topic.
I would say if you're bootstrapping, I think the number one skill you must have is learn fast. You don't just do one thing or two. You got to do multiple things, and learning to do those things well done and fast. I think it's one of the biggest skills you can develop. And nowadays with AI, you can learn anything and so much faster than 5, 10 years ago. And so that would be the number one skill and the number one takeaway: learning fast and being always up to date to what's going on, be involved in the community, talking to people, and using that as your resource for you to build whatever it is that you're building. If it's content, if it's podcasts, if it's a product, being close to your community, I think it would be the number one thing. And so learning fast and close to your community.
Love that. Tally?
Yes, so mine would be workflow optimization. Like, I really
Mm,
believe that is the key. So, like, for both agencies and a SaaS company, it's like we need efficient process. Like, how can we stay profitable and still avoid burnout as well? And just like slow and steady. But that could, that means basically like taking on too many clients or like trying to build too many features in our case, that could actually hurt us. So, if we take in slowly and build based on the actual feedback and like people are actually using and like, okay, this works, this doesn't work, and same applies to an agency, right? You want to make sure that the quality of your work is, you have more quality than just quantity at the end of the day.
I love that. I love that. And I think mine would be that behind every business is like humanness. Like there is a human behind that. And people will buy products and services and, whatever it is that they're going to buy, right? People love to consume different things. But if you think about the brands that do it the quote unquote best, it's the relationship that is built behind the brand. So kind of to echo Fran's point just a little bit on community, but not just the community that you're building, but really like who are the people behind the brand, and sharing that and showcasing that I think is really important because anyone can buy any product. Like I said, they're picking your product likely because of the people who are creating it. You know what I mean? So anyways, as people continue to get to know, but like even for example with Northflow, there have been some people who've booked demo calls because they're like, "Oh, Simona, I heard that you're involved with this. Like this is really cool. I'm going to book a demo call." And that's like stuff that I've heard on my Instagram. And so it's cool because when you start to build connections like that, if people are invested in you, they're invested in the other things that you do. And so I think it's just really important to consider that and to like keep that at the forefront. If you're building a product, it can be very tech heavy. And also you have to remember human relationships at the end of the day. So that's my point.
Yes.
Anyways, yeah. Thank you both so
Yes.
much for joining me here today.
Sure thing.
Yeah. Of course. And
Amazing.
then just another thing too, like whether you're running a SaaS or an agency, the best way to grow is really to stay connected to the people you serve. So if
Mm.
you want to participate in giving feedback and being part of our journey, building Northflow, go ahead and book a demo. I'll be happy to speak to you. And then we can focus on the real problems and prioritize what really moves the needle and build something that will last.
I love that. Thank you so much. And we will see you next time behind the workflow.